I don't even know if I'm welcome at her wedding. That's what the man said before he even looked at me. His coat was cashmere, his shoes polished to perfection, but his voice cracked like dry wood. I miss her first steps chasing clients, he continued, and now I don't know how to take one toward her. He laughed, but it wasn't joy. It was the kind of sound a man makes when he realizes too late that money can't buy time. He was sitting on a park bench that December evening, the snow piling on his shoulders like unspoken apologies. The man was in his 50s, clean-cut, well-dressed, the kind of figure you'd expect to see stepping out of a Rolls-Royce, not hunched forward with his elbows on his knees, watching flakes fall like memories he couldn't hold on to. At first, I thought he was just another tired executive winding down, but the look in his eyes was something else entirely. It was the look of a man who had spent his whole life sprinting, only to find the finish line wasn't where he thought it would be. His name, he later told me, was David Harrison. If you knew Wall Street, you'd know that name. He owned an investment firm that had swallowed smaller firms like snacks. He lived in a penthouse with a view of the entire city, and yet tonight, he couldn't even look his own reflection in the eye. He had received a call that afternoon. His daughter, Emma, was engaged, 25 now, living on the West Coast, and her voice on the phone trembled when she said, "I'd love for you to walk me down the aisle if you have time." That "if" shattered him. It wasn't just a polite phrase. It was a summary of their entire relationship. He had missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed the Tuesday night nothing moments that turn into everything when you blink and they're gone. His hands, calloused from decades of closing deals, couldn't remember what it felt like to hold her tiny fingers. The last time he'd seen her cry, she was 6, and he had told her he'd be back after this trip. That trip turned into another and another and another. Now she was getting married, and he didn't know the man she was marrying, didn't know the woman she'd become. He'd invested in everything but her. He sat in silence, just breathing, watching the world blur into white. And then came a voice, small, high, curious. "You look lonely." He turned and saw her. A little girl, maybe 6, standing beside the bench. Pink mittens hanging awkwardly from her sleeves, a hand-sewn brown dress that was too thin for the weather. She had a bright flower clipped into her dark hair, the kind of flower you'd expect to see in spring, not in snow. Her mother stood a few feet away, watching with cautious kindness, not interrupting. "I'm Lucy," the girl said. "You look like my mommy when she misses my daddy." He blinked, unsure how to respond. "Do I?" he asked softly. She nodded with a certainty only children possess. "Sometimes people look at snow like it's just cold, but my daddy says snow is God's way of showing that even the quietest things can be beautiful." He smiled, just barely. "Your daddy sounds wise." "He is," she said proudly, "but he says he learns most of the important stuff from me." She reached out her mittened hand and caught a snowflake in her palm. Then she took off the mitten entirely, revealing a tiny pale hand, and held it toward the sky, watching the flakes dissolve against her skin. "Everyone's different," she said, "like people, and if you don't stop and look, you forget there's magic in them." David stared at her hand for a long time, watching the snow land and melt. He didn't know why, but his chest ached in a way it hadn't for years. It wasn't physical. It was memory. It was a realization that this little girl was more present, more grounded in the moment, than he'd been in decades. She extended her other hand toward him, mittens still on. "Want to try?" she asked. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he pulled off his leather glove and held out his hand beside hers. Together, they sat like that, palms open to the falling sky. No words. Just two souls, one beginning, one regretting, catching time before it melted. David couldn't remember the last time he'd felt snow on bare skin. Not really. Not without checking the forecast for flight delays or brushing it off a car hood between meetings. But now, as the cold touched his hand and melted instantly, something else began to thaw inside him. Something older, deeper, buried beneath decades of appointments and power lunches. Lucy, still staring upward, whispered, My daddy says snowflakes are like little reminders that even when everything looks gray, there's still something soft falling from the sky to remind us that not everything has to hurt. He didn't know how to answer. He just nodded, eyes glassy, breath catching in his throat. It was absurd, really, this moment. A titan of industry, speechless beside a child in a handmade dress. In a park he usually ignored on his way to the next win. And yet, he felt more seen by her than by anyone in years. "Are you missing someone too?" she asked without turning, as if she already knew. He didn't respond right away. What could he say? That he missed someone who was still alive? That his daughter had grown up like a tree he never watered, and now he wanted to taste the fruit? That somewhere along the line, he confused being important with being present? "Yes," he said eventually, voice low. "I think I've been missing her for a very long time." Lucy didn't nod or say, "I'm sorry." She didn't offer comfort like an adult would, with platitudes or false cheer. She just stood quietly beside him, like snow does, soft, still, and necessary. Behind her, the mother finally began to walk closer, giving her daughter a small wave. Lucy looked up at David and said, "I have to go soon. Mommy says it's almost time for Coco." He smiled again, not the hollow kind, the real kind. The kind that comes from remembering who you used to be. "Lucy," he said, "you're very wise. Has anyone ever told you that?" She nodded matter-of-factly. "Grandma says it skips generations." He laughed, actually laughed, a deep, surprising, unguarded sound that startled even him. Lucy giggled, delighted. As her mother reached them, David pulled out his wallet. Not for cash, not this time. Instead, he took out a business card and scribbled something on the back before handing it to the woman. "If you ever need anything," he said gently, "please reach out. I mean that." The woman glanced at the card and her eyes widened slightly. "Mr. Harrison, we couldn't possibly." "It's not charity," he said quickly. "It's a thank you. Your daughter reminded me tonight that the best investments aren't in stock portfolios. They're in people. And I've been investing in the wrong places." The woman looked at him for a long moment, then gave a soft, grateful smile. Lucy has a gift for showing up where she's needed. David turned to the little girl one last time. "Thank you for sharing the snowflakes with me, Lucy May. I won't forget this." She wrapped her tiny arms around his waist in an impulsive, fearless hug. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "Don't forget to call your someone. Tell them you're not too busy anymore." And just like that, she skipped away, following her mother toward the Christmas lights that shimmered in the distance. David remained there a moment longer, staring at the spot where she'd stood. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, and dialed. "Emma?" His voice trembled. "It's Dad. I just wanted to say, if you're still okay with it, I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle. And I want to hear everything. Everything I missed." There was silence on the other end, then the soft sound of tears. Happy ones. As the call ended, he tucked the phone away and looked back at the snowy path ahead. He didn't feel like a millionaire anymore. He felt like a father finally waking up. And somewhere ahead, a child's pink mitten waved goodbye.